You had mentioned in our previous conversation about selling a tech company, and that was before venture into photography. What was the company and when did you start it?
Well, I started in 1994, and it was a very company. It was a consulting firm, but we basically did custom web application development. But this was at a time when nobody was really doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Hooking up databases to a web page, at first it was all just static HTML pages. And it was difficult to do because a lot of the tools we have today didn't exist. There was no PHP, there was no MySQL, there was none of this stuff. Even Microsoft didn't have, I don't think SQL Server had been launched yet. It was like Microsoft Access, which was just kind of a desktop database.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a friend that created a tool that allowed that there was this brand new operating system called Windows NT. It could run on that, which was designed to be a server platform, which was much cheaper than, say, getting a Sun server or something, which cost a ton of money. Or you didn't need to have a copy of Oracle, which also cost a ton of money, which were really the options because there was only enterprise stuff. So you could do a low cost thing using a cheap database on Windows NT. His program called ColdFusion, which is now owned by Adobe, let you do simple scripting on the back end to do things like SQL statements and hook up a database. So he was building this tool. Companies came to him and said, well, we would like to have our company use this. So he didn't actually want to build the websites. He wanted to focus on the tool. So he turned to me and he said, well, do you want to do this? So I was like, sure. So I started doing it. And then I had a friend who had a friend. And next thing you know, I'm 28 years old. We have a company of about 50 people. I sell the company to a pretty big multinational corporation who I later realized they had mostly done consulting at that point, but their background was in mainframe computers from way back in the day. And they were looking to get sold. So I think they bought my company to put like an internet gloss.
Mm-hmm.
You got to remember, this is in the late 90s during the dot-com boom.
Mm-hmm.
So they could be internet-ish, so they could increase their valuation when they got sold. I didn't realize that at the time. But yeah, so I was 28. I sold the company. I stayed with them for 1 year where they paid me a lot of money and I didn't do anything, and just kind of planned what I was going to do next.
What's the hardest part about building a company, at least in your experience?
When I did it, I was in my 20s, my early 20s, and you don't know a lot of the things you have to do. Like you hire someone, okay? That's easy enough. Here's money. Do something. But then there's like, well, okay, well, how do I do my taxes? And the employees are asking you this. What about FICA? How do you take this stuff out? And I'm like, I don't know. And I knew someone who said, oh, well, there are companies that handle this, payroll companies, and they will handle all that for you. And then they just show up once every 2 weeks with your checks, and then you give the checks to everybody. It's like, wow, that was simple. And there's just a whole bunch of things like that you just don't really. I mean, I had the benefit of being in a hot industry doing internet stuff in the 90s. So I guess there's some part of it that I didn't have to worry about. Later on, so I started a business after that. We had a network of video game websites, and we had a LAN center. I had that right when the dot-com bubble crashed,
Mm-hmm.
and that was painful. And I think I had gotten complacent, or I thought that this was really easy. And I think a lot of that may have just been due to the environment that I was in and the industry that I was in. And I didn't have to I didn't realize how difficult it actually was for most people to run a business.
Right. Interesting. And so what came of that burst for you then when the dot-com bubble burst? Did the company stay alive or what happened?
We were doing great until one day. So we had this network of video game sites. We were doing like 250,000 page views a month. No, more, I'm sorry, 50 million page views a month. And we were selling our ad inventory through CNET. And then they called us up one day and said, we're pulling the plug. So that went to zero. And then we had to unwind it all. And then eventually LAN gaming. So people used to have LAN parties. They would all bring their computers together because you could play faster on an Ethernet connection than you could over, say, ISDN or DSL or whatever people had at the time. That kind of went away as bandwidth improved and computers improved. So that was an idea that wasn't really long for the world. For a very brief period of time, it was very popular, and we could pack the place with people that wanted to come in because we provided the computers and the network, but it just didn't last that long.
Right. Okay. So then after this company You have another?
I had invested in another firm
Okay.
from some of my former employees that was a business intelligence software, but I had no day-to-day involvement in that. And then I went to school for a couple years just for fun. Went and studied geology and geophysics and realized I did not want a career in academia. And then I came up with the idea of traveling around the world. And I thought I'd do that for a year or two, and it turned into 13 years.